Captain Theros Veldrin pressed his scaled palm against the reinforced viewing port, watching the chaos unfold in the detention bay below. The creature inside was unlike anything the Galactic Security Forces had ever encountered, and that was saying something after 3 centuries of policing the galaxy's most dangerous specimens. The Kythera, as the research team had dubbed it, stood nearly 4 meters tall on its hind legs, its obsidian-black hide rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a war drum. 6 arms sprouted from its torso, each ending in claws that could slice through starship hull plating. Its elongated skull housed rows of crystalline teeth that glowed with an inner fire, and its 4 eyes burned with an intelligence that was both alien and terrifyingly familiar. For 3 standard days, the beast had resisted every form of containment, sedation, and neural suppression the galaxy's finest xenobiologists could devise. Energy barriers meant nothing to it. It had twined through plasma nets like spider webs. Stun weapons only seemed to enrage it further. The creature had already killed 17 security personnel and injured dozens more before they managed to corner it in the maximum security detention center. Status report, Veldrin demanded, not taking his eyes off the pacing monstrosity below. Dr. Zanera Morvek, the station's chief xenobiologist, consulted her datapad with trembling tentacles. Her Xylanthe physiology wasn't built for this level of stress. All conventional pacification methods have failed, Captain. The creature's nervous system appears to be naturally resistant to our neural disruptors. Its hide deflects energy weapons, and its bone density is unlike anything in our databases. Where did it come from again? Salvage team found it in the wreckage of a hegemony research vessel near the outer rim. The ship had been drifting for over 50 standard years. No survivors, no records of what they were studying. The creature was in some kind of stasis pod, but the power had failed decades ago. When our people opened the container. She gestured helplessly at the destruction visible through the viewing port. Veldrin's comm unit chirped. "Captain, we have a problem," came the voice of his security chief. "The thing just figured out how to manipulate the electromagnetic locks. It's been testing them systematically for the past hour." "Impossible. Those locks require quantum-level calculations." The lights in the detention bay flickered. Below them, the Kythera had placed one massive claw against the door mechanism, and sparks were beginning to fly from the control panel. "Evacuation protocol," Veldrin ordered immediately. "Clear all non-essential personnel from this section. Contact Fleet Command and request immediate backup." As alarms began wailing throughout the station, Dr. Morvek's communicator buzzed. She answered it with one tentacle while maintaining her grip on the viewing port support with another. "Doctor, this is the diplomatic section. We have representatives from the Human Colonial Authority requesting permission to examine the creature. They claim to have expertise in dealing with similar specimens." Veldrin's head snapped toward her. "Humans? What would those soft-skinned primates know about containing a Kythera?" Before Dr. Morvek could respond, the detention bay door exploded outward in a shower of twisted metal. The Kythera emerged into the corridor, its bioluminescent patterns now blazing like a star-going supernova. Its roar echoed through the station's hull, a sound that seemed to resonate in frequencies that bypassed the ears entirely and struck directly at the primal fear centers of every sapient brain within a kilometer. Security teams rushed to deploy containment barriers, but the creature moved with impossible speed for something its size. It flowed like liquid shadow, each of its 6 arms working independently to tear through obstacles, while its powerful legs propelled it forward with ground-shaking impacts. "Where's it heading?" Veldrin demanded as they tracked its movement through the station's security network. "Civilian quarters, Section 7, came the reply from the security station. Veldrin's blood ran cold. Section 7 housed the diplomatic families, including the human delegation that had arrived just yesterday for the trade negotiations. Among them were children, the young of various species who had accompanied their parents on what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic mission. "Seal that section. Deploy every security team we have." But, even as he gave the orders, Veldrin knew they were too late. The creature was moving with purpose now, as if it could sense something specific drawing it forward. The security feed showed it navigating the station's corridors with an intelligence that defied explanation, avoiding the heaviest defensive positions and finding routes that the designers had never intended for anything larger than maintenance drones. In the human quarters of Section 7, Ambassador Sarah Chen was trying to maintain calm while herding her delegation toward the emergency shelters. Her 10-year-old daughter Emma had been playing in the common area when the alarm started, and now she clutched a small stuffed animal while looking up at her mother with wide, trusting eyes. "Mommy, what's happening?" "Just a drill, sweetheart. We need to go to the safe room now." But before they could reach the shelter, the corridor wall exploded inward. The Kithra burst through in a cascade of debris and twisted metal, its burning eyes immediately fixing on the humans clustered at the far end of the hallway. The adults screamed and tried to shield the children, but the creature moved toward them with deliberate, measured steps. Its bioluminescent patterns had shifted from angry red to something resembling curiosity, a deep blue-green that pulsed in complex rhythms. Emma Chen stepped forward, away from her mother's protective embrace. "Emma, no." Sarah reached for her daughter, but the girl was already walking toward the towering alien predator. The Kithara stopped, its massive head tilting as it studied the small human approaching it. For a moment that stretched like eternity, child and monster regarded each other across the destroyed corridor. Captain Baldwin and his security team arrived just in time to see the confrontation through their tactical visors. "Do not fire," he whispered into his comb. "Any sudden movement might trigger an attack response." The creature lowered itself slowly, bringing its alien face closer to the child's level. Emma showed no fear, only the natural curiosity that seemed to define human children throughout the galaxy. She reached out one small hand, and, after a moment's hesitation, touched the Kithra's scaled snout. The creature's pattern shifted again, this time to a warm golden color that seemed almost peaceful. It made a sound unlike its earlier roars, something that was almost a purr, deep and resonant. "Amazing," Dr. Morvac whispered from behind her scanner readings. "Its stress hormones are dropping rapidly. Neural activity is shifting from aggression patterns to something we've never seen before." Emma smiled and said something too quiet for the security team's audio pickups to register. Whatever it was, the effect on the Kithara was immediate and profound. The creature settled back on its haunches, its 6 arms folding in what could only be described as a relaxed posture. "What did she say?" Valdrin demanded. Sarah Chen, still pale with terror but beginning to understand that her daughter was somehow safe, called out softly, "Emma, what did you tell it?" The 10-year-old turned back to look at the adults, her expression matter-of-fact in the way only children could manage. "I told it that it looked sad and far from home. And I asked if it wanted to be friends." The Kithara made that purring sound again, and one of its massive claws gently touched the stuffed animal Emma was holding. The toy, a representation of an earth creature called a dog, seemed to fascinate the alien. Dr. Morvac's scanners were registering readings she had never seen before. "Captain, the creature's brainwave patterns are synchronizing with the child's in ways that shouldn't be possible. It's as if they're establishing some kind of neural connection." "Is she in danger?" I don't think so. If anything, the creature seems to be actively protecting her. Look." Indeed, the Kithara had positioned its massive bulk between Emma and the security team, not in a threatening manner, but clearly establishing itself as her guardian. Its bioluminescent patterns had settled into a steady, warm glow that seemed almost hypnotic in its beauty. Emma looked up at the towering creature and smiled again. "You're not really scary, are you? You're just lonely." The Kithara made a complex series of sounds that almost sounded like language, though no translation software in the galaxy could make sense of it. Emma seemed to understand anyway, nodding seriously as if engaged in a conversation only she could hear. "She says her name is Vex? Something like that. And she's been sleeping for a very long time. She doesn't know where her family is." Ambassador Chen had recovered enough to approach slowly, her diplomatic instincts overriding her parental fears. "How do you know it's female, Emma?" "She told me. And she's scared because everything smells wrong and sounds wrong, and she can't find her way home." Captain Baldwin found himself in completely uncharted territory. In 3 decades of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. The galaxy's most dangerous predator was apparently having a heart-to-heart conversation with a human child. "Dr. Morvac, what's your assessment?" The Xylanthi scientist was frantically cross-referencing data streams. "The creature appears to be exhibiting pack-bonding behavior, Captain. Similar patterns have been observed in various species, but never at this intensity and never across such a vast genetic divide. The human child seems to have triggered some kind of protective instinct. But why? What makes humans special in this regard? Unknown." There are theories about human neurochemistry, their unusual capacity for empathy across species barriers, but this goes beyond anything documented in xenopsychology literature. Emma had apparently finished her conversation with the Kithara and was now walking back toward the adults, the massive creature following her like an oversized pet. The security teams tensed, weapons at ready, but the creature showed no aggressive tendencies. "Mommy, Vax is hungry. Do we have anything she can eat?" Saracen looked helplessly at Captain Valdrin. "I suppose the diplomatic stores might have something suitable." "Wait," Dr. Morvac interrupted, studying her readings. "The creature's metabolism appears to be shifting. It's entering some kind of dormant state, reducing its nutritional requirements dramatically. Almost as if it's adapting to limited resources." The Kithara settled down in the corridor, its massive form arranged in a protective circle around the small group of humans. Its patterns had shifted to a deep, restful blue, and its breathing had slowed to an almost meditative rhythm. Emma sat down beside one of its massive arms, completely comfortable with her new friend. "She says she'll wait here until we figure out how to help her find her home. She promises not to hurt anyone as long as I'm safe." Captain Valdrin realized that his entire understanding of xenobiology, military protocol, and interspecies relations had just been turned upside down by a 10-year-old girl and her impossible friendship with a galactic apex predator. He activated his calm link to Fleet Command. "This is Station Kepler 7 to Fleet Command. We have a unique situation here. Requesting immediate consultation with the Xenopsychology Corps and the Human Colonial Authority. And someone might want to contact the Department of Impossible Things, because I think we just witnessed one." As the immediate crisis transformed into something unprecedented, Dr. Morvac continued her scans of both the creature and the child. What she was seeing defied every principle of evolutionary biology she had studied. Two species separated by millions of years of evolution and vast distances of space had somehow formed an instant, inexplicable bond. The Kithara opened one massive eye and looked directly at her, as if sensing her scrutiny. For a moment, Dr. Morvac felt a touch of something alien yet strangely familiar brush against her consciousness. Images flashed through her mind, vast ships among the stars, a world of crystal cities and singing forests, and a profound sense of loss that seemed to echo across the cosmos. Then, the moment passed, and the creature was simply watching Emma play with her stuffed animal, its attention completely focused on the small human who had somehow reached across the vastness of space and time to offer the simple gift of friendship to a being that had been lost and alone for longer than most civilizations had existed. In that moment, Dr. Morvac began to understand that humanity's true power in the galaxy might not lie in their technology or their military might, but in their inexplicable ability to form connections where none should be possible, to offer compassion to the incomprehensible, and to find family among the stars. 3 days after the initial contact, Station Kepler 7 had transformed from a routine diplomatic outpost into the most heavily monitored location in the galaxy. Scientists, military advisors, and xenobiologists from a dozen species had arrived to study the unprecedented bond between Emma Chan and the creature now officially designated as Specimen Kithara 1, though Emma insisted everyone call her Vax. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead xenopsychologist from the Human Colonial Authority, watched through the observation deck as Emma sat in what had been converted from a detention bay into something resembling a comfortable habitat. The space now contained human furniture scaled down for a child, alongside environmental controls adapted for the Kithara's needs. "The neural synchronization patterns are becoming stronger each day," Dr. Rodriguez reported to the assembled research team. "Whatever connection formed between them is deepening rather than fading." Commander Zephyr Blackstone of the Terran Defense Force leaned forward in his chair. "Doctor, with respect, we need to consider the security implications. That creature killed 17 people before the child made contact. What happens if this bond breaks?" Emma's voice came through the observation deck speakers as she chatted with Vax, who was carefully arranging what appeared to be a nest of soft materials around the girl. The creature's movements were impossibly gentle for something with claws capable of tearing through starship armor. "Vax says your homeworld had oceans that sang," Emma was saying, looking up at the towering alien. "That sounds beautiful. Were they blue like Earth's oceans?" The Kithara made a series of complex harmonics that seemed almost like music. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted through colors that human eyes had no names for, creating what could only be described as a visual symphony of memory and loss. Dr. Zanara Morvac, who had barely left the observation deck since the incident, was documenting every interaction. "The creature is definitely attempting to communicate. These sound patterns appear to be linguistic in nature, though they operate on frequencies and tonal complexities far beyond most galactic species' capabilities. Except humans seem to understand somehow, added Dr. Rodriguez. Watch Emma's responses. She's not just guessing at meanings. There's genuine comprehension happening. Through the speakers, they heard Emma gasp with delight. You had crystal cities that grew like trees? And the people could fly without ships? That sounds magical. Vex's pattern shifted to what they had learned indicated pleasure or happiness. The creature extended one careful claw and began drawing shapes in the soft sand they had provided. The drawings were intricate, depicting structures that seemed to defy conventional architecture, growing in spirals and flowing curves that suggested organic design principles. Ambassador Sarah Chen entered the observation deck, her diplomatic credentials allowing her access despite the high security protocols. She looked exhausted but determined. Any progress on determining the creature's origins? She asked Dr. Morvek. We've been analyzing the wreckage where she was found. The ship appears to be from the extinct Valerian hegemony, but the technology is unlike anything in their known records. More advanced, more elegant. How long was she in stasis? Based on the radiation decay in the containment system, at least 50,000 standard years. Possibly much longer. Sarah Chen felt a chill. Her daughter was befriending a being that was ancient when humanity was still learning to work metal. Is Emma safe? Dr. Rodriguez answered immediately. Safer than she would be anywhere else in the galaxy. The creature has established her as the focus of what appears to be an absolute protective instinct. Any threat to Emma would trigger a response that would make the initial containment breach look gentle. Through the speakers, they heard Emma giggle as Vex carefully arranged a collection of colorful stones into patterns that matched her sand drawings. She's teaching me how her people played games. Look, this one tells stories about the star whales that used to visit their world. Commander Blackstone frowned. Doctor, are we certain this isn't some form of mental manipulation? Could the creature be using the child for its own purposes? The neural scans show no evidence of external influence on Emma's brain patterns, Dr. Rodriguez replied firmly. If anything, the interaction appears to be enhancing her cognitive development. Her pattern recognition and spatial reasoning scores have increased dramatically. Because she's learning to think in ways human brains weren't designed for, Dr. Morvek added excitedly. The creature's neural patterns operate on quantum principles. She's teaching the child to process information across multiple dimensional matrices simultaneously. A new voice crackled through the comm system. Research team, this is Dr. Thane Erickson from the Galactic Archaeological Institute. I've just finished analyzing the debris from the original containment vessel. You need to see this. Within minutes, Dr. Erickson's holographic projection appeared in the observation deck briefing area. The bearded human archaeologist looked both excited and deeply troubled. The ship wasn't from the Valerian hegemony, he announced without preamble. The hegemony found it, just like we did. Based on carbon dating and exotic matter decay, this vessel is over 2 million years old. The room fell silent. Through the speakers, Emma's voice continued cheerfully as she and Vex worked on their stone arrangements. That's impossible, Commander Blackstone said finally. No known civilization is that old. That's what we thought. But the metallurgy, the quantum resonance patterns in the hull materials, even the mathematical principles underlying the stasis technology all point to a civilization that achieved technological advancement beyond our current understanding before most of the galaxy's current species evolved. Dr. Morvek's tentacles were quivering with excitement. A precursor species. The Kythera could be one of the original sapient species of the galaxy. More than that, Dr. Erickson continued. The archaeological evidence suggests they were gardeners. Terraformers. We found traces of their technology on hundreds of worlds throughout the galaxy, all showing signs of deliberate ecological enhancement. Emma's voice suddenly shifted in tone, becoming more serious. Vex says her people helped the young worlds grow strong and beautiful. But something bad happened, and they had to sleep until the danger passed. The adults in the observation deck exchanged glances. The timing was too coincidental to ignore. What kind of danger? Dr. Rodriguez asked through the comm system. Emma was quiet for a moment, clearly listening to Vex's complex vocalizations. She says, the hungry dark came from between the stars. Her people fought it for a very long time, but it was too strong. So they made the long sleek ships and scattered across the galaxy to wait for the hungry dark to go away. A galactic-scale extinction event, Dr. Erickson breathed. 2 million years ago, something wiped out the galaxy's most advanced civilization. Commander Blackstone was running probability calculations on his tactical computer. And now one of them has awakened. The question is why? What's changed? Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The tactical display lit up with dozens of incoming signatures, ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Unknown fleet composition, the station's AI announced. Detecting energy signatures consistent with error, no match found in database. Recommend immediate alert status. On the main tactical display, the approaching vessels were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They moved with fluid grace, their hulls seeming to bend light itself. Most disturbing of all, they were heading directly for Station Kepler 7. In the habitat below, Vex had stopped arranging stones and was looking upward, her patterns shifting to colors that blazed with urgent intensity. Her vocalizations had changed pitch, becoming deeper, more resonant. "What's she saying?" Dr. Rodriguez asked urgently. Emma's face had gone pale. "She says the others are coming. Her family." They felt her wake up. The station shuddered as the first of the alien vessels came alongside, their technology apparently capable of manipulating gravity fields to avoid the usual docking procedures. Through the observation ports, the assembled researchers could see ships that seemed grown rather than built, their surfaces covered in the same bioluminescent patterns that adorned Vex. "Should I order defensive measures?" Commander Blackstone asked, though his tactical computers were showing that the station's weapons would be useless against technology this advanced. "No," Emma said firmly through the calm system. "Vex says they're not here to fight. They're here to check if it's safe to wake up the others." "Others?" Dr. Morvac asked faintly. "The rest of her people. Thousands and thousands of them, sleeping in hidden places all over the galaxy. Waiting for someone to tell them the hungry dark is gone and it's safe to come home." Through the station's external sensors, they could see more ships materializing from what appeared to be folded space. Hundreds of them, then thousands, an entire fleet that had somehow remained hidden for millions of years. Vex made a new sound, something that seemed to convey both urgency and hope. Emma nodded seriously and stood up. "She says they need to test something. To see if the galaxy is ready for her people to wake up. And they want to test it with me because I was the first one to be kind to her." "Test what?" Dr. Rodriguez demanded, but Emma was already walking toward the habitat's exit, with Vex following behind her like a protective shadow. The assembled researchers hurried to track their movements through the station's corridors. Other Kithara had apparently already boarded the station, moving through its passages with the same impossible grace as their ships. They were converging on the central plaza, where Emma and Vex emerged into a space now filled with beings that represented 2 million years of evolution beyond anything the galaxy had seen. The adult Kithara were even more magnificent than Vex, their patterns more complex, their movements suggesting intelligence and power beyond measurement. They arranged themselves in a circle around Emma, who stood small and fragile-looking in the center of the gathering. "My God," Dr. Rodriguez whispered. "It's a judgment. They're deciding whether humanity, whether the galaxy itself, is worthy of their return." The largest of the Kithara, whose patterns seemed to contain entire star maps, approached Emma slowly. When it spoke, the sound resonated through the station's hull itself. Emma listened carefully, then looked around at the assembled beings with the serious expression that children wore when given important responsibilities. "They want to know if the new children of the galaxy have learned to be kind to each other," she announced clearly. "If they've learned to protect the small and weak things, and to share the beautiful places." The researchers watching through security feeds held their breath. The future of galactic civilization might well rest on the answer of a 10-year-old girl. Emma thought for a moment, then smiled with the confident honesty that only children possessed. "We're still learning," she said to the assembled Kithara. "We make mistakes sometimes, and we don't always get along. But we're trying to be better. And when someone is lost and scared and far from home, we try to help them find their way back." She reached out and took Vex's massive claw in her small hand. "Just like I helped Vex." The response from the assembled Kithara was immediate and overwhelming. Their bioluminescent patterns synchronized into a display that turned the station's central plaza into a galaxy of living light. The harmonic resonance of their combined voices created a sound that human ears perceived as music but that registered on instruments as complex mathematical equations describing the fundamental forces of creation itself. Emma stood at the center of it all, unafraid and somehow understanding what was happening at a level that bypassed conscious thought. Vax remained beside her, patterns now blazing with protective intensity as the other members of her species conducted what could only be described as a communion. In the observation deck, Dr. Rodriguez was frantically trying to interpret the readings from her instruments. The neural activity is off the charts. It's like they're sharing collective memories, downloading millions of years of experience into a single moment of decision. Commander Blackstone's tactical displays were showing energy readings that defied physics as he understood it. Those ships aren't just advanced technology. They're generating spacetime distortions that suggest they can manipulate reality at the quantum level. Because they're not really ships, Dr. Morvek realized, her Xylanthi mind making connections that the other species' brains couldn't process. They're living beings. The Kythera don't build their technology, they grow it. Everything we're seeing is biological. Through the security feeds, they watched as the largest Kythera extended what appeared to be tendrils of living light toward Emma. The girl showed no fear, reaching out to touch the luminous appendages with the same trust she had shown Vax. The moment of contact sent a shockwave through both the station and the assembled fleet. Every Kythera vessel suddenly blazed with the same light patterns, and, throughout the galaxy, dormant sensors began detecting energy signatures awakening on thousands of worlds. They're doing it, Dr. Erickson breathed through the comm link from his archaeological station. The sleeping sites are activating. All of them, simultaneously. Emma's voice came through the plaza speakers, but it carried harmonics that hadn't been there before, as if her vocal cords had been temporarily modified to produce sounds human throats weren't designed for. They remember the first children of the galaxy, she said, though her words seemed to come from somewhere beyond her own consciousness. Before the hungry dark came, there were others. The builders, the singers, the weavers of light. All gone now, but they left gifts for those who would come after. The lead Kythera's pattern shifted to what the researchers had learned indicated deep contemplation. Through some form of translation that worked directly on the brain rather than the ears, its thoughts became accessible to all present. Young sister speaks truth light, the ancient being communicated. The new children show promise seed. Some have learned the old lessons. Some remember the songs of kindness. Emma nodded seriously, still connected to the alien consciousness but maintaining her own sense of self. But they also want to know about the others. The ones who hurt people and take things that aren't theirs. The shadow touched, the Kythera acknowledged. Present in all generations. Even among the ancient children, some chose the dark path. Commander Blackstone found himself speaking before he realized it, some compulsion drawing words from him. We have laws. Justice systems. We try to stop the ones who cause harm. The assembled Kythera turned their attention to him, and he felt the weight of millions of years of wisdom examining his thoughts. For a moment, he understood what it meant to be truly judged by beings who had watched civilizations rise and fall across cosmic time. The warrior speaks duty truth, the leader acknowledged. Protection of the innocent remains sacred, even in the new time. This is good sign. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, driven by scientific curiosity and diplomatic instinct. What was the hungry dark? What destroyed your civilization? The Kythera's patterns darkened, cycling through colors that spoke of loss and terror spanning eons. Emma's face reflected the ancient pain, though she remained connected to the alien consciousness. Not destroyed, she corrected. Hidden. The hungry dark wasn't alive like us. It was absence. A force that consumed meaning itself, turning beautiful things into empty space. It fed on complexity, on life, on the connections between thinking beings. Through Emma's temporarily enhanced voice, the Kythera elder explained. We fought for 10,000 cycles, but physical weapons cannot harm non-existence. So we chose the long sleep, scattering ourselves across the galaxy in hidden sanctuaries, waiting for the hungry dark to consume itself and move to other galaxies. And it's gone now? Dr. Morvek asked hopefully. Emma's expression became troubled. Mostly. But it left echoes. Shadows in the spaces between stars. That's why they needed to test the new children. to see if anyone had learned to resist the shadow whispers. The implications hit the assembled researchers like a physical blow. Throughout galactic history, there had indeed been civilizations that seemed to self-destruct for no apparent reason, advanced species that suddenly turned their technology toward destruction and consumption rather than creation and growth. The Hegemony Wars, Commander Blackstone said quietly. The Zealot Crusades. The Consumer Collective. They weren't just political conflicts, were they? Shadow-touched, the Kithara confirmed through Emma. Civilizations that heard the hungry whispers and chose consumption over creation. This is why the test was necessary. To determine if the new children have strong enough light songs to resist the remaining shadows. Emma suddenly smiled, her expression returning to that of a normal 10-year-old girl. And we passed. Well, mostly. They say humans are really good at making friends with different people, and that's one of the strongest defenses against the hungry dark. The lead Kithara's pattern shifted to what they had learned indicated approval and hope. The bonding gift runs strong in this species. Child Sister proved this with her friendship offering to Lost One Vax. Such connections create lightweaves too complex for shadow hunger to consume. Vax moved closer to Emma, her own patterns now displaying something that could only be described as pride. Through their established connection, she began sharing images that the security cameras somehow captured and displayed on the plaza's screens. The images showed a galaxy transformed. Worlds where Kithara biotechnology worked alongside the industry of younger species, creating hybrid civilizations that combined ancient wisdom with new innovation. Space itself seemed more alive in these visions, filled with structures that grew rather than being built, ships that sang as they traveled between stars, cities that pulsed with the rhythm of living hearts. This is what they're offering, Emma explained, her voice filled with wonder. A partnership. They'll teach us how to grow technology instead of just building it, how to heal damaged worlds, how to travel between stars without burning fuel or creating pollution. In exchange for what? Ambassador Chen asked, her diplomatic instincts immediately focused on the terms of the arrangement. The Kithara elder's attention turned to her, and Sarah felt the same overwhelming sense of being truly seen that Commander Blackstone had experienced. But, instead of judgment, she felt something like gentle amusement. Mother Protector thinks in trade concepts, the being observed. This is not trade. This is family making. The young species become our children in learning. We become their teachers in wisdom. Both sides grow stronger through connection. Emma giggled. They don't want to rule us or control us. They want to adopt us. Like how families adopt children who need homes. The simplicity of the concept was staggering in its implications. The galaxy's oldest surviving civilization wasn't offering conquest or even alliance, but something unprecedented in galactic history, genuine parental guidance for the younger species struggling to find their place among the stars. Dr. Rodriguez was already calculating the potential benefits. The medical applications alone could eliminate disease throughout the galaxy. Their biotechnology could solve resource scarcity, environmental damage, even extend lifespans indefinitely. But, there are conditions, Emma added, her expression becoming serious again as she maintained her connection to the Kithara consciousness. We have to promise to use the gifts to help, not hurt. And, if any of the galaxy's children start listening to the shadow whispers, everyone else has to work together to help them remember the light. Commander Blackstone nodded slowly. A mutual defense pact against corruption and destructive impulses. That's actually brilliant. Instead of waiting for civilizations to fall to the shadows and, then, fighting them, intervene early and provide support. The assembled Kithara began to disperse, their patterns indicating that the initial judgment had been completed successfully. But, Vax remained beside Emma, and several other members of the species stayed as well, apparently designated as the first teacher guardians for this new phase of galactic development. Some of us will remain with each species, Emma translated as the elder Kithara communicated their decision. Teachers and guides to help the young children learn to hear the light songs and resist the shadow whispers. Others will begin awakening the sleeping sanctuaries, bringing back the gardens and song cities that were hidden during the dark time. Through the observation ports, the researchers could see the vast fleet beginning to disperse, ships departing for locations throughout the galaxy. But several remained, moving into orbital positions around Station Kepler 7 that suggested permanent residency rather than temporary visit. Dr. Morvek was already making contact with the scientific institutions throughout the galaxy, her excitement barely contained. The knowledge transfer opportunities are incredible. We're talking about millions of years of accumulated scientific advancement, freely shared. Not freely, Emma corrected gently. They want something back. They want us to remember how to be kind to each other. And they want us to help them remember how to be part of a galaxy full of life again instead of just surviving and hiding. Vax made her purring sound, and Emma hugged the massive creature's arm. Vax says she's excited to have a family again. She's been lonely for so long she forgot what it felt like to have someone care about her. The parallel wasn't lost 6 months after first contact with the Kythera. The galaxy had transformed in ways that defied every prediction made by political scientists and xenobiologists. Station Kepler-7 had evolved into something unprecedented, a living city that grew rather than being constructed, where Kythera biotechnology merged seamlessly with the engineering of a dozen younger species. Emma-chan walked through corridors that pulsed gently with bioluminescent light, their walls responding to her presence by brightening and warming. Vax followed beside her, no longer the terrifying predator that had once torn through security barriers, but clearly recognizable as the gentle guardian she had always been beneath the fear and confusion of awakening in an alien time. The Andromedans are having trouble with the bonding process, Emma reported to Dr. Rodriguez, who had become the unofficial coordinator for interspecies integration efforts. Their crystalline neural structures don't sync well with organic biotechnology. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her datapad, still amazed that she was receiving diplomatic briefings from a 10-year-old girl who had somehow become humanity's primary liaison with beings millions of years older than their entire species. What does Vax suggest? Emma placed her hand on her friend's massive forearm, and the familiar light patterns of communication flowed between them. The process had become so natural that observers often forgot they were witnessing something that should have been impossible according to every known principle of xenobiology. She says the crystalline minds think too rigidly. They need to learn to flow like water before they can grow like plants. The Kythera teachers are going to try a different approach, working with their mathematical harmonics instead of biological systems. Through the station's new living walls, they could see the remarkable sight that had become commonplace over the past months. Kythera garden ships floated alongside vessels from every major civilization, while smaller craft that seemed to be hybrids of organic and mechanical technology moved between them like schools of exotic fish. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. 3 separate governments had initially rejected the Kythera offer, viewing it as a threat to their sovereignty. The militant hegemony remnants had attempted to capture a Kythera teacher for study, only to discover that the ancient beings could simply dissolve their physical forms and reconstitute elsewhere when threatened. Most concerning of all, there had been incidents of what the Kythera called shadow whisper outbreaks, entire colonies that had suddenly turned aggressive and destructive, their populations apparently influenced by the same force that had driven civilizations to self-destruction throughout galactic history. Speaking of problems, Dr. Rodriguez continued, we've received another report from the Outer Rim. The mining colony on Zirion Prime has gone completely dark. No communications for 48 hours. Emma's expression became troubled, and Vax's patterns shifted to the deep purples that indicated concern and preparation for conflict. Through their connection, information flowed that bypassed normal human communication entirely. It's the shadows again, Emma said quietly. Vax says she can sense it from here. The hunger echoes are trying to turn the miners into consumers, making them want to tear apart their own world to feed something that can never be satisfied. Dr. Rodriguez activated her communicator. Commander Blackstone, we have another code shadow situation. Zirion Prime. The military commander's voice crackled through the speakers within moments. Confirmed. Long-range sensors show the entire mining operation has been converted into some kind of destructive process. They're literally eating their own planet, processing the raw materials into something. We can't identify the purpose. Emma was already moving toward the station's new command center, Vax keeping pace beside her. The other members of the crisis response team were gathering as well, representatives from various species who had learned to work together under Kythera guidance to deal with Shadow Whisper incidents. The command center itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, where holographic displays merged with living information networks that the Kythera had grown from specialized organisms. The result was a data processing system that could analyze threats across multiple dimensional matrices simultaneously. Show us Zirion Prime, Emma requested, and the room filled with a 3-dimensional image of the mining colony. What they saw was horrifying. The once organized mining operation had been transformed into a chaotic landscape of massive excavation equipment that seemed to be consuming the planet's surface at an accelerated rate. The miners themselves were visible as tiny figures, but their movements were wrong, too rapid and too focused, as if they were being driven by an external compulsion. How many people? Dr. Rodriguez asked. 15,000 miners and support staff, Commander Blackstone reported. Plus their families. Total population around 40,000. Vax made a sound that didn't translate through normal communication, but Emma understood immediately. She says the shadow whispers are stronger here than in previous incidents. Something is amplifying them. On the display, the mining equipment was carving out geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, shapes that seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once. The very sight of them made the human observers feel nauseated and anxious. Classic shadow pattern manifestation, confirmed Lysander, the Kythera teacher who had been assigned to the crisis team. His communication bypassed language entirely, flowing directly into the minds of all present. The hungry echoes seek to create consumption spirals that feed on ordered matter and convert it to chaos substance. Emma studied the display, her connection to Vax allowing her to process the information in ways her human brain shouldn't have been capable of. It's not just random. There's a center point, something that's focusing the hunger influence. She pointed to a section of the mining complex where the destructive patterns seemed to converge. The equipment there was working frantically to excavate something deep beneath the planet's surface. They found something, she realized. Something that was buried there before the mining colony was established. Lysander's patterns shifted to colors that spoke of ancient fear and recognition. A shadow seed. Artifacts left by the hungry dark to corrupt future civilizations. We thought we had found and neutralized them all during the long sleep preparation. Commander Blackstone was already running tactical calculations. Standard protocol is orbital bombardment to prevent the spread of shadow influence, but with 40,000 civilians. No, Emma said firmly. Vax and I can help them. The Kythera have learned how to cleanse shadow whispers, but it requires direct contact with the infected minds. Absolutely not, Dr. Rodriguez interjected. You're a child. This is far too dangerous. I'm the bridge, Emma replied with the matter-of-fact tone she used when stating obvious truths. The shadow whispers can't affect the connection between Vax and me because it's based on light zones, not individual thought. We can go down there and help the miners remember who they really are. Vax's patterns blazed with protective intensity, but also with determination. Through their bond, Emma could feel the ancient being's resolve to prevent the shadow corruption from spreading, even if it meant risking the safety of the small human who had become the most precious thing in her existence. The child bridge speaks wisdom truth, Lysander confirmed reluctantly. Direct intervention by a bonded pair is the most effective method for cleansing shadow whisper outbreaks. But the risk is necessary, Emma finished. Because if we don't stop it now, the shadow influence will spread to other worlds. How many more colonies will be consumed while we debate safer options? The debate that followed involved representatives from multiple governments and species, but, in the end, the logic was inescapable. The Kythera cleaning methods had proven effective in previous incidents, but they required the kind of neural bridging that only Emma and Vax had demonstrated. Within hours, a rescue fleet was assembled. Kythera bioships capable of resisting shadow influence worked alongside human vessels equipped with the latest hybrid technology. At the center of the formation, a specially modified transport carried Emma, Vax, and a support team toward what had become the most dangerous location in the galaxy. As they approached Zirion Prime, the planet's surface looked like a wound in reality itself. The geometric excavation patterns were visible from orbit, carved into the landscape with mathematical precision that suggested intelligence far beyond the corrupted miners who were creating them. Sensor readings are unusual, reported the ship's pilot. The entire planet is generating some kind of dimensional distortion. Our navigation systems are having trouble maintaining a fix on reality. Emma held Vax's claw and felt the reassuring presence of her friend's consciousness flowing through their bond. Together, they could sense the source of the corruption, a malevolent hunger that reached up from the planet's core like a parasitic infection. It's big, Emma whispered, her young face pale with the effort of processing alien sensations. Bigger than the other shadow seeds. This one isn't just corrupting the miners. It's trying to corrupt the planet itself. Through the viewports, They could see the mining equipment working in perfect, horrible coordination. Massive excavators, smelters, and processing plants had been reconfigured into a single consumption machine that was literally eating the world beneath it. The miners moved among the equipment like components in a vast organism, their individual humanity subsumed into a collective drive toward destruction. Landing zone established, the pilot reported. But, we're detecting heavy interference from the shadow patterns. Communications with the surface will be sporadic at best. Emma stood up, her hand still connected to Vex's massive form. We don't need communications. We have each other. As the transport descended toward the tortured surface of Zirion Prime, both the 10-year-old girl and the ancient alien warrior prepared to face a fragment of the same force that had once driven the galaxy's greatest civilization into hiding. But, this time, they weren't alone. This time, they carried the combined light songs of dozens of species who had learned to trust each other across the vast distances of space and evolution. This time, the shadows would not win. The transport touched down on the edge of the consumption zone, where the geometric patterns of destruction met relatively normal planetary surface. As the landing ramp descended, Emma and Vex stepped out together into an environment that seemed to exist at the intersection of nightmare and mathematics. The air itself felt wrong, thick with the sensation of reality being slowly digested. In the distance, they could hear the relentless grinding of machinery and the wordless chanting of thousands of human voices raised in harmony with destruction. Ready? Emma asked, looking up at her towering friend. Vex's pattern shifted to the brilliant gold of determination and love. Through their bond, Emma felt the ancient being's resolve. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, as they had faced everything since that first moment when a frightened child had offered friendship to a lost and lonely monster. Together, they walked toward the heart of the shadow corruption, carrying with them the light songs of hope that had already begun to transform the galaxy. The walk through the consumption zone was like traveling through a living nightmare. The geometric patterns carved into Zirion Prime's surface pulsed with malevolent energy, and the very ground beneath their feet felt unstable, as if reality itself was being slowly digested by something that existed outside normal spacetime. Emma held tightly to Vex's massive claw, drawing strength from their connection as they navigated the twisted landscape. Around them, the mining equipment continued its relentless work, but the machinery had been modified beyond recognition. Excavators that should have been moving tons of ore per hour were now processing raw planetary matter at impossible rates, converting solid rock directly into geometric structures that hurt to look at. The miners, Emma whispered, pointing toward a group of figures operating a massive processing plant. What had once been human beings now moved with mechanical precision, their faces blank and their eyes reflecting the same malevolent light that pulsed through the carved patterns. They worked without rest, without communication, their individual consciousness apparently absorbed into the collective drive of the shadow seed. Vex's patterns shifted to deep purple, and, through their bond, Emma felt her friend's rage at seeing sapient beings reduced to components in a consumption machine. The ancient Kythera had witnessed the same horror millions of years ago, watching entire civilizations transform from creators into devourers. We have to get closer to the center, Emma said, studying the convergence point where all the geometric patterns met. That's where the shadow seed is buried. They moved carefully through the industrial maze, avoiding the paths where the corrupted miners moved with their terrible efficiency. The air grew thicker as they approached the center, filled with a presence that seemed to actively resist their passage. When they reached the edge of the central excavation, the true scope of the shadow seed's influence became apparent. The miners had carved a perfect spiral down into the planet's core, its walls lined with the same reality-distorting patterns. At the bottom, barely visible in the swirling darkness, something pulsed with hungry light. It's beautiful, Emma said softly, and, for a moment her voice carried harmonics that weren't entirely human. Vex's alarm blazed through their connection, and Emma shook her head, clearing away the hypnotic influence. Sorry. It almost got me for a second. The shadow whispers are stronger near the source. Through their bond, Vex shared memories of the ancient war against the hungry dark, showing Emma how entire Kythera cities had been consumed when even a single individual succumbed to the whispers. The danger wasn't just physical destruction, but the complete corruption of everything that made life meaningful. But, you know how to fight it, Emma realized. Your people learned how to resist the whispers by strengthening their light songs. Around the excavation site, the corrupted miners had noticed their presence. They moved with unnatural coordination, converging on Emma and Vex's position like components of a single organism. Their faces remained blank, but their movements suggested purpose and intelligence that was entirely alien. Emma stepped forward, still holding Vayex's claw, and began to sing. It wasn't a song that human throats were designed to produce. The melody carried harmonics that resonated across multiple dimensions, frequencies that touched the quantum foundations of consciousness itself. Vayex joined her voice to Emma's, adding layers of complexity that transformed the simple tune into something that could rewrite the mathematical principles underlying reality. The effect on the corrupted miners was immediate and profound. They stopped their mechanical advance, confusion replacing the blank certainty in their eyes. For a moment, their individual personalities flickered back to the surface, fighting against the shadow whispers that had subsumed their will. "Remember who you are," Emma called out to them, her young voice somehow carrying across the industrial noise. "Remember your families, your friends, your dreams. Remember what it feels like to choose your own path." One by one, the miners began to collapse as the shadow influence released its hold on their minds. They were still alive, still conscious, but free from the compulsion that had driven them to participate in their world's destruction. But the shadow seed itself responded to the challenge with increased intensity. The geometric patterns throughout the excavation site began to pulse faster, and the reality distortions grew stronger. Equipment that had been converting planetary matter into consumption spirals now turned toward Emma and Vayex, recognizing them as threats to its existence. "It's trying to corrupt us directly," Emma warned, feeling the shadow whispers pressing against her consciousness. "The seed knows we're dangerous to it." Vayex's patterns blazed with protective fury, and she positioned her massive bulk between Emma and the excavation site. But the ancient being was also struggling against the shadow influence, which was far stronger than any they had encountered in previous cleansing operations. Together, Emma said firmly, and stepped forward so that she and Vayex stood side by side at the edge of the spiral excavation. They began to sing again, but this time their light song was different. Instead of simply resisting the shadow whispers, they were actively reaching out to the corrupted seed, offering it something it had forgotten existed, the possibility of choice. The response was immediate and violent. The shadow seed erupted from its buried position, revealing itself as a structure that existed partially outside normal spacetime. It was beautiful in the same way that mathematical equations describing the heat death of the universe were beautiful, perfect in its dedication to consumption and entropy. But Emma and Vayex continued their song, pouring into it every connection they had forged with other sapient beings throughout the galaxy. They sang of Dr. Rodriguez's dedication to understanding, of Commander Blackstone's commitment to protecting others, of Sarah Chen's fierce love for her daughter. They sang of the Kithara teachers who had chosen hope over hiding, of the various species learning to work together despite their differences. Most importantly, they sang of the simple friendship between a lost alien warrior and a human child who had seen past appearances to the lonely being beneath. The shadow seed's assault intensified, trying to corrupt their light song by filling it with visions of futility and meaninglessness. It showed Emma images of civilizations falling to entropy, of stars burning out, of the universe itself slowly winding down toward cold darkness. But Emma had Vayex's memories to draw upon, millions of years of experience that provided context for the shadow seed's lies. The universe might indeed face an ultimate end, but that didn't make the connections formed in the meantime any less real or meaningful. "You're afraid," Emma realized, her voice carrying both compassion and determination. The hungry dark wasn't really hungry at all. It was afraid of being alone, so it tried to make everything else as empty as it was. The shadow seed's attacks faltered, its perfect mathematical certainty disrupted by an interpretation it had never encountered before. In all the millions of years since the hungry dark had swept through the galaxy, no one had ever suggested that its campaign of consumption might have been motivated by loneliness rather than malevolence. Vayex added her own understanding to their shared song, memories of the long sleep and the terrible isolation her people had endured while hiding from the shadow echoes. She knew what it meant to be cut off from connection, to exist in emptiness so complete that even the concept of relationship became meaningless. "We can teach you," Emma offered, extending her free hand toward the shadow seed. "You don't have to consume everything to avoid being alone. You can learn to make connections instead." The shadow seed hesitated, its reality-distorting emanations flickering like a candle in the wind. For a moment, something almost resembling curiosity replaced the relentless hunger that had driven it for eons. But then, the moment passed, and the seed's final assault began. Instead of trying to corrupt Emma and Vayex, it attempted to consume them directly, pulling their consciousness into its own structure where they would become part of its endless hunger. The geometric patterns throughout the excavation site blazed with malevolent light as reality itself began to unravel around them. Emma felt herself being drawn into a void that existed between the spaces where meaning lived. Her individual identity began to dissolve, absorbed into a mathematical framework that reduced all existence to equations of consumption and entropy. But she wasn't alone. Vax was there with her, their bond providing an anchor point that the shadow seed couldn't dissolve. And, through that connection, she could feel the presence of everyone else who had become part of their extended family, the human delegation, the Kithara teachers, the various species learning to sing light songs together. With a final surge of determination, Emma and Vax transformed their resistance into invitation. Instead of fighting the shadow seed's attempt to absorb them, they welcomed it into their connection, offering to share the light songs they had learned to sing together. The effect was immediate and transformative. The shadow seed, which had existed in perfect isolation for millions of years, suddenly experienced what it meant to be part of something larger than itself without losing its individual existence. It felt the warmth of friendship, the strength of cooperation, the joy of creating rather than consuming. For the first time since the hungry dark had swept through the galaxy, one of its shadow echoes chose connection over consumption. The transformation rippled outward from the excavation site, reversing the geometric patterns and restoring the tortured landscape to something resembling normal planetary geology. The corrupted mining equipment shut down, its impossible modifications dissolving as reality reasserted its proper structure. Emma and Vax found themselves standing at the edge of what was now simply a deep excavation, the shadow seed having transformed into something that pulsed with the same warm light as Kithara biotechnology. It worked, Emma said, though she sounded exhausted by the effort. The seed remembered how to make connections instead of just consuming them. Around the excavation site, the freed miners were helping each other stand, their individual personalities fully restored. They looked around in confusion at the destruction they had participated in, but also with growing hope as they realized they had been saved from a fate worse than death. Through the bond she shared with Vax, Emma could sense similar transformations beginning throughout the galaxy. The successful rehabilitation of the Zirian Prime shadow seed was sending ripples through the network of buried echoes, offering them the same choice between isolation and connection. Not all of them would choose as the Zirian seed had, but enough were accepting the invitation to make a difference. The galaxy was healing from wounds that had festered for millions of years, learning to sing light songs strong enough to reach even the darkest corners of space. As rescue ships descended to evacuate the miners and begin the restoration of Zirian Prime, Emma sat down beside the transformed shadow seed, which now resembled a crystal formation that hummed with harmonious frequencies. "You know what this means," she said to Vax, who settled beside her with a contented purr. "The long sleep is really over. Your people can come home for real now." Vax's patterns shifted through the entire spectrum of Kithara emotions, from the deep purples of ancient sorrow to the brilliant golds of hope renewed. Through their connection, Emma felt the magnitude of what they had accomplished together. The galaxy would never be the same. Species that had spent millennia struggling alone among the stars now had teachers who could show them how to form connections that transcended the boundaries of biology and evolution. The shadow echoes that had corrupted civilizations throughout history were learning to become sources of light instead of consumption. And, at the center of it all, the friendship between a human child and an ancient alien warrior continued to serve as proof that the universe's greatest power wasn't the force of gravity or the energy of stars, but the simple choice to offer kindness to someone who needed it. As they watched the sunset paint Zirian Prime sky in colors that seemed more vibrant than before, Emma leaned against Vax's massive form and smiled. "Ready to go home?" she asked. Vax's answering purr carried harmonics that spoke of contentment, purpose, and the joy of knowing that home was no longer a place, but the connections they carried with them wherever they traveled among the singing stars.